Hi, I'm Jessica Coyne, and this is Yoga for Beginners. And this video is about yoga for sciatica. So let me clarify first by saying that sciatica is not an actual condition itself. It is always a symptom of another condition. It happens when the sciatic nerve is compressed due to inflammation in the spine, or in the hips, or even in the piriformis, which is a muscle that the sciatic nerve runs next to. And for some people, the sciatic nerve actually runs through that muscle. So what happens is the sciatic nerve, which stems from the lower four vertebrae in the spine and then the sacrum, if there is a condition such as a bulging disc or a herniated disc or a ruptured disc that puts inflammation in the spinal cord cavity where the spinal cord and all the nerves run, and if there is inflammation there, it's going to be pressing on the spinal nerve, compressing it and causing pain. So that pain is going to come all the way out into the hip and then possibly down the outside and back of the leg, and then also even into the lower leg and into the foot. So sciatic pain can be relieved when you're standing and walking. So you'll notice that if you sit for a long time and you have sciatic pain, the pain is worse when you're seated, but it improves when you're up, standing around and walking and just kind of moving your legs around. So that's one condition that can cause sciatica, is having a ruptured, herniated, or bulging disc in the spine. Another issue that can cause sciatic pain is what's called piriformis syndrome. So the piriformis is a muscle that extends from your basically from your femur all the way toward the middle of your pelvis. So it's kind of like looks like a hammock, and the sciatic nerve runs right behind it. So if that piriformis is inflamed or swollen for some reason, it will be pressing on that sciatic nerve, causing pain. Also, for some of the population, I think it's 10% of the population, that sciatic nerve actually penetrates the piriformis muscle. So it really is connected to everything the piriformis muscle feels, the sciatic nerve is going to feel as well. Another condition that can cause sciatic pain is if your hips are out of alignment and they're pressing on that sciatic nerve. So there are cases where people will have sacroiliac joint dysfunction, SI joint dysfunction, and that will be pressing on the sciatic nerve as well. So any of these conditions, the disc issues, the piriformis issues, and the hip sacroiliac joint issues can cause sciatic pain. And there's a lot of things that you can do to reduce that sciatic pain. Typically, it goes away by itself in about 4 to 6 weeks if you don't do anything to resolve it and if you are not aggravating the condition. But for some people, unfortunately, it hangs around a lot longer, so you want to do some things to kind of lessen that pain and just make yourself feel better. There are a lot of lifestyle activities that we do that actually cause this pain to worsen. A lot of people say that after they're doing their sports, after they're doing their activities, their sciatic pain is worse, and they blame the sports and they blame the activities. So when you're out exerting yourself and you finally get a chance to rest, the first thing that we do is we're running, we're doing all of our activity, and then we sit down and we go, oh, I'm so tired, and maybe drink some water or whatever. Take a look at my back, how it's rounded here. This is one of the biggest culprits of causing sciatic pain if you've got disc issues. What I'm doing right now is rounding my back, and I'm creating a really unhealthy position for that sciatic nerve. So if you sit down, you want to sit like this. So that's one of the first things that you can do to avoid sciatic pain, is just always sitting with what we call an anterior pelvic tilt. So let me demonstrate that a little bit more for you. Okay, so an anterior pelvic tilt, so here's just a pelvis in neutral, and then an anterior pelvic tilt is when you stick your butt out behind you. Now, we have a posterior pelvic tilt, which is when we are going to tuck our tailbone under and we round our back. So this is our posterior pelvic tilt, and this is an anterior pelvic tilt. and this is just the spine in neutral. When you are seated, you want to always be seated in your anterior pelvic tilt. So you always want to have your hips pointing forward like this. So imagine your pelvis is a bowl of water. An anterior pelvic tilt, you're going to drip some of that water out of the front of the bowl. And then you bring the pelvis back to neutral, and then a posterior pelvic tilt is when you're going to take that bowl and dump some of the water out of the back. So we've got posterior pelvic tilt here, and we've got anterior pelvic tilt here. Now, if your spine, and you've got sciatic issues, if your spine is in that posterior pelvic tilt, even for just a few moments, it's going to cause pressure and aggravate that sciatic nerve. So even if you're just seated for a couple minutes like this, you're going to cause sciatic nerve pain. Best thing that you can do is get a lumbar cushion, lumbar pillow, lumbar support when you're seated. Put it in your car, put it in your favorite chair at home, and make sure that your back is always in this anterior pelvic tilt position or neutral. You never want it to be in this posterior pelvic tilt position. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is sleeping. If you sleep on your side, sleep with a pillow in between your knees. And let me demonstrate why. When you're sleeping, your hips are actually internally, your top leg is internally rotated, so your hips are closed. So if you've got any misalignment in the hips, this is going to put pressure on that sciatic nerve. So what you want to do is put a pillow in between your legs when you're sleeping. So this is going to bring the hips into a neutral position and allow them to release that sciatic nerve and get rid of any pressure on it overnight. You're sleeping for 8 hours a night, typically, so that's a long time to put pressure on that nerve. Okay, so there's also several yoga poses that you can do that are going to release that sciatic nerve and relieve some pain. So let's get into it. All you're going to need for this practice is a pillow and a mat, and if you don't have a mat, you can just use a towel. Let's get started. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is start in a comfortable, easy pose. Now, if easy pose is not easy for you, typically if you've got back pain, it's not very easy to sit down on the ground like this. So you're going to either sit up against a wall or sit with your seat on a pillow so that your hips are lifted, or you're going to sit on a couple pillows so that your hips are lifted. What I want you to make sure that you're doing is using that anterior pelvic tilt. Now, if you feel like your knees are up here, you can bring your feet out wider. You can even just straighten your legs. Good. So this is all I want you to do here is just feel your hips in that anterior pelvic tilt and make sure that you're not in this posterior pelvic tilt. So hips are leaning forward, shoulders are back and down, and chin is parallel to the mat. So we're just in a nice neutral spine. The spine is not rounded and hunched forward. So this is the first thing I want you to do when you are working with your sciatic nerve and trying to relieve pain, is making sure that you're seated with your hips in this anterior pelvic tilt and your back straight. So from the side, it's going to look like this. And please, please make sure that you get this part right if you're going to sit. If this is uncomfortable, then just skip this pose and we'll move into the next pose. So sometimes just getting down onto the ground like that is just impossible, and that's okay. You don't have to do that. We'll move right into the next pose. The next pose that is going to help is child's pose. So child's pose can be done in lots of different ways. So you're gonna take your knees out really wide and your big toes together. You'll sit your hips back down onto your heels and stretch your upper body forward so that your head is coming down onto the floor. Now, this is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. What I want you to be aware of here is not to round your back in this pose. Now, to note that if it's hard for you to bring your knees all the way down or bring your hips all the way down here because you've got some tightness in the knees, then you want to put a pillow underneath of your hips. And then you can also take another pillow. I just happen to have another one handy. You can take another pillow and just put it right here. So we've got this nice relaxed position. So you're gonna let your head, so I'm looking at the camera, but obviously you wanna have your head down. And just take a few breaths here. Make sure that the hips are tilted up here in this position. We don't want to put any pressure on the lower back, so we never want to round it. And we want to make sure that we're really not working on stretching the hamstrings or really stretching anything too intensely. The sciatic nerve, or any nerve for that matter, does not like to be stretched, so we want to be very gentle with it. Now, if any of these poses that we're doing hurt, please stop and go to the next pose. We never want to increase the pain. What we're trying to do is what we call centralization of the pain. So the pain starts in the back and it goes all the way down the legs, in extreme cases all the way down into the feet. What we're looking for is that pain to start to retract up towards its starting point, which would be the lower back. So if you start off with pain that goes all the way down to your foot, and then you're doing these poses and you're doing some things that might help relieve the pain, and the pain starts to go maybe up to the knee and it doesn't go all the way down to the foot anymore, that's an improvement, that's good. So maybe work from there, do these poses a little bit more, do the lifestyle activities that would help you even more, and then maybe the pain starts to go a little bit further up the thigh, it doesn't reach all the way down to the knee anymore. Then maybe one day the pain is just in your back and in your hip and it's no longer in your leg. And then maybe one day the pain is just in your lower back. That's good. This is all an improvement. This is all called centralization of the pain. So then we work to continue to do these exercises that are going to help heal your pain until the pain is one day gone, which will happen. So just be careful that you're not rounding the back and putting pressure on those discs. Okay, so let's come out of this pose and we'll move all of our pillows out of the way for now. And we're going to lie all the way down onto the mat. So come down nice and slowly and just get here at your own pace. And we're gonna do Sphinx pose. So Sphinx pose is one of the best things that you can do for your sciatic pain. Make sure that your elbows are down underneath of your shoulders. So if your elbows are too far forward, it becomes a little bit of work for your upper body. If the elbows are too far back, it starts to be a lot of work on your shoulders. So we don't really want to work the muscles, we just want to relax here. So make sure that the shoulders and the elbows are stacked. Palms are going to be down, toes are pointed, and we're just pulling the heart forward. So just rest here for a few moments, take a few deep breaths in and out. In and out. So you can do this for as long as you like here. So for the sake of time in this video, we're only going to do it for a few breaths, but you can stay here for 5 minutes if you want to. There's no amount of time that's too long in this position. This will really help your back. Okay, so we're gonna go from here and we're gonna lie all the way down, but we're gonna bring our hands right underneath of our shoulders. So we're going to point the toes and just press up a little bit and down. And we're gonna do this 5 times. So forehead to the mat, and then inhale up and down. Good. If it's a little bit too hard on your arms, just bring them forward. Just a little bit up. So we're not going for a huge deep back bend like this. We're just lifting and then lowering. Inhale up. This is number 3. And down. If you can only come up this far, that's good too. And then down. Last one. Inhale up and down. Great. From here, I'm just gonna have you roll over onto your back with your knees bent. So now we're going to address the piriformis muscle. So the piriformis muscle is that hammock-shaped muscle that goes from the femur bone all the way to the base of the hips. So that's gonna cause tension on the sciatic nerve sometime. And this can really, really help to release that muscle, release the sciatic nerve, and relieve some pain. Now again, if this hurts, I want you to stop and move on to the next exercise or repeat an exercise that you really liked. So we're gonna take the right ankle and place it on top of the left knee. Flex the right foot to protect the knee. And then I want you just to take your right hand maybe and just press a little tiny bit of pressure into this right knee to press it away from you. That's all I want you to do right now. So this is a nice, relaxing alternative to a pigeon pose, which we do flipped over, which is a little bit more of an extreme type of exercise to stretch this piriformis muscle. If you know that and you like that exercise and it feels good, go ahead and do that. That's another one that works for this, but I'm not going to demonstrate it in this video just because I'm doing just a very gentle practice if you're having acute pain. So we hold this here for maybe 3 to 5 breaths. Nice, long, deep breaths. Good, and then we'll bring this knee back and then set the foot on the ground. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. So we're gonna take the left ankle and place it on top of the right knee and press this left knee away from you. So just a gentle amount of pressure. It doesn't have to be a really hard push away from you. So we're just releasing that muscle. And just remember to breathe easy, and remember, don't push through pain. If it hurts, come back and do a different one of the yoga poses that we've done. And then bring the knee back, and we'll set the left foot on the ground. Now we're gonna come into a bridge pose. So a bridge pose you can do with or without support. So I'm gonna go grab my pillow and demonstrate it with that as well. So you're lying on your back with your knees bent. Now you can take one pillow or 2 pillows, or if you have a yoga block, you can use that as well. So we're gonna press our hips up off of the ground, and we're gonna place the pillow underneath of the lower back. So we've got a little arch in the lower back. Now, if you want to do bridge pose without support, you're going to just lift up off of the pillow, put the pillow to the side, and then the arms down by your sides. Hold this here for 3 to 5 breaths. So if you're holding it here for a while, it's nice to have something underneath of you so that it's a lot less work. Good, and then bring it down. Ah, nice and relaxed. All right, so from here, let's come back up to a seat. Another thing that you can do if being seated is very uncomfortable for you is you can sit in what we call hero's pose. So hero's pose, you're gonna kneel and then place a pillow underneath of your hips and just sit down on there. And so you can sit here as well. If it's uncomfortable on your ankles, you can place a rolled up towel underneath of your ankles for support. So that is just a nice easy practice that you can do any time of day to release your sciatic nerve and maybe relieve some pain. You can do this practice even 2 or 3 times a day if you would like, until your sciatic pain starts to centralize, which means to move up all the way up to its starting point. So that's all we're looking for. I hope that this video helps you a little bit, and I really do hope that you get some relief from your sciatic pain. I personally know what it's like to have that, but my yoga has really helped to keep it under control so that I really don't have any flare-ups of sciatica anymore. So if you have any questions, make sure that you email me at yoga4beginnersorlando@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching. Namaste.